So I played Spider-Man 2, and I gotta say, I'm pretty disappointed. This game has some really good stuff, but it also dropped the ball in quite a few areas. First, I'll talk about the visuals. This game looks good, and the performance is rock solid. Although there are some things that I don't like about the graphics. I still don't like Peter's new face. His voice just doesn't fit the new model. He looks way too young for how he actually sounds. He looks younger than Miles. I just think the Spider-Man PS4 model was perfect, and I was distracted when Peter didn't have his mask on during cutscenes. His voice just doesn't fit this model. The gameplay is a mixed bag for me, and that's putting it lightly. I played the game on Spectacular, and the difficulty was about right. Although there were some times where the difficulty was kind of annoying. For example, the symbiote enemies were kind of annoying to deal with. They're just too tanky, and you can't even web them to the ground without a sonic burst. You also can't even hit the green symbiotes. You have to use gadgets or venom power to actually hurt them. This is just annoying. There were also some times where I felt there were a bit too many enemies on screen at once. Also, the enemies felt a bit too spongy. The swinging is still really good, and traversing throughout the map feels seamless. I also like that you can turn fall damage on, and turn swinging assist off. This makes swinging more engaging for me. It's satisfying to pull off a swing just before I land, knowing that I can hit the ground and take damage if I mess up. The sound effects aren't as good as the first game. My hits just don't feel as impactful as they did in Spider-Man 1. There's also too much time spent not playing as Spider-Man. I thought Insomniac learned from their mistakes from the previous game. MJ has so much plot armor. How did she take out these mercenary guys with just a taser? And apparently it's because she trained with Sable? And I don't buy that. She should not be able to take out these guys alone with just a taser. Also, why am I riding a bike in a Spider-Man game? This is a Spider-Man game. I don't want to play as anyone else other than Spider-Man in a Spider-Man game. It's really that simple. I don't know why Insomniac doesn't get that. This game also makes decent use of the DualSense controller. The combat was still pretty okay, although I liked the combat in the previous game more. And that has a lot to do with the gadgets. The gadgets aren't as good as they were in the previous game. Like what happened to the impact web, or the trip mine, or the web bomb. These gadgets were a lot of fun to use, and the gadgets in this game is just way less fun. The game is more focused on these flashy power moves, and I find that less engaging and less like Spider-Man. I can understand designing Miles like that, but not for Peter. And having Peter be more gadget focused, and Miles being more power focused, makes the Spider-Man stand out from each other. Because they pretty much feel like the same character in this game. The boss fights were okay, but definitely worse than the first game. They just felt way more repetitive. Most of what you do is dodge 2 or 3 hits, get a small opening for an attack, rinse and repeat. These bosses also have multiple phases, but they don't change much during those phases. Because of that, the boss fights kind of drag out and feel too long. The side content wasn't as fun as the content in Spider-Man 1. What happened to the base missions? That was some of my favorite side content in the previous game. I mean, the game kinda has that with the Mysteriums, but they're not as interesting as the base missions in the last game. Those missions involve different factions that played a little differently, depending on the enemies. But the enemies you fight in the Mysteriums are just these generic green hallucinations. This is just way less interesting. I didn't like the side mission with Yuri. I liked her story in Spider-Man PS4, and it was pretty exciting to see her come back as a vigilante. But after the initial excitement wore off, there really wasn't that much to keep me engaged. Yuri isn't as interesting as she was in the last game. In that game, she was a badass cop who was trying to keep the city under control while also struggling to fight crime by the books. But now, she's just an edgy vigilante. I don't give a fuck about the faction we're fighting because we don't know anything about them, and it just turned out to be a way for Carnage to be introduced. It was pretty disappointing. I just found the side content to be much better in Spider-Man 1. I don't like the story very much, and a lot of that has to do with the characters. Most of the characters are pretty bad in this game. The only character I actually liked was Peter. Every other character was either boring beyond belief or just annoying. I still don't like Miles. Miles still isn't an interesting character. He's lame, he's not as funny as Peter, and his quips aren't as good. Miles is just a lamer version of Peter. He just drags the story down. If he wasn't in this game, I would like it way more. I didn't care about Miles' conflict with Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative killed Miles' dad, and Miles has to deal with his hatred towards him. But I don't really care about this narrative because we barely see him or his dad in Spider-Man 1. So I don't care about their relationship. So Miles' conflict with Mr. Negative isn't very engaging and feels really forced. I also don't care about any of Miles' friends because they're just not that interesting. Miles' story just feels like filler in this game. Like, why should I care about this museum he's trying to keep open? Why should I care about him writing a college essay? Also, the dialogue isn't very good. The dialogue is so on the nose and cheesy. There's just so much telling instead of showing in this game. Characters just state exactly how they feel and what they think, or what they did in the past, and we're expected to care. And that's not how you're supposed to write dialogue. The dialogue just got so annoying to listen to after a while. I don't like Peter and Harry's relationship. This relationship isn't fleshed out well at all. They just say how much they care about each other and what they did together. We don't get nearly enough time to flesh out this relationship. Peter and Harry have little to no chemistry with each other. And that goes for any relationship in this game. At no point did they actually feel like friends. And the scenes we do get with Peter and Harry are bad. I don't like Harry. He's just not that much of a character. Also, I don't think the Hunters or Kraven was handled that well. Kraven was at least interesting, but his character isn't really fleshed out well. We barely see Kraven throughout the story. He mostly just lets his goons do things for him. We know next to nothing about the Hunters. Like, why do they support Kraven so much? I guess they just like to hunt things and fight people? I don't know, man. Mary Jane is still not interesting. Her relationship with Peter also isn't fleshed out well. They also have no chemistry with each other, and they don't even seem like they like each other. She also quits her job towards the end of the story, and I was mostly just confused. I thought she liked her job. I mean, yeah, she was a bit stressed, but I didn't know she hated it. And I guess it's because J. Jonah Jameson had strict deadlines and was kind of being an asshole. I don't know, man. This is just another plot line that's not explored well. This game is also too woke. The environmental stuff was a bit too heavy-handed. Spider-Man also goes on this anti-gun rant, which is just so cringy.
Whose idea was it to have a gun club in the city? I think I'm gonna start a petition. Replace all the gun clubs with something better. Like a compliment club. Compliments don't hurt anyone, and they're free. For example, you take a punch really well. Good job. Hey, I think I'm onto something. Less guns, more compliments.
There's also a mission where you play as Miles' deaf black friend, which is why. And there's also a mission where you help a gay guy get a homecoming date. Yeah, this game is very progressive, you guys. The story just wasn't engaging. None of the drama scenes were effective to me because the interactions between these characters just weren't written well. The pacing is off in this story. The first act of this story is kind of a slog. There's just too much boring shit we have to do. Like cleaning up the house, riding bikes to Peter's old school, walking around Oscorp, going to amusement parks, and playing these boring flashback missions as Peter. And during these moments, nothing interesting happens. These are supposed to be the moments where the characters interact and have some character development. But the character writing isn't good. And the second half of this story goes by way too fast. Peter's descent into becoming an asshole because of the suit happens way too quickly. We should have spent more time developing this. This definitely could have been done in a more subtle way. There's also some stupid moments in the story. So Mr. Negative is stuck in Kraven's arena, and I don't know how that is. Kraven doesn't seem that strong. Mr. Negative is pretty strong, and I don't know how Mr. Negative got detained by Kraven. Could we at least see this happen? Could we at least see the fight between them two, and how he was able to keep him detained? And he says there's no escape, which is kind of stupid. First of all, we should have seen him try to escape, instead of just telling us that it's impossible. That just seems really lazy to me. Then he literally escapes out of a broken window in the ceiling. Like, what? Did he even try to find an escape? And after Mr. Negative escapes, Miles fights and loses to Kraven off screen. We don't even see it happen. Also, this was a good opportunity to have some drama between Mr. Negative and Miles, but that doesn't really happen because the dialogue is so cliche and on the nose that I can't take any of it seriously, and because none of these characters are fleshed out well at all. The ending also wasn't very satisfying. Nothing really changes at the end. Yeah, Peter has the anti-venom, but Peter and MJ are still together, and Harry is still sick and unconscious, and Miles is still Miles. He's not made any more interesting towards the end of the story. I mean, I guess he has a girlfriend now, but that's it. And I guess Peter says he's going to take a break from being Spider-Man to help the environment or something with this foundation. And I just think that's stupid. I don't think this is something Spider-Man would do. He's going to take a break from saving people to help the environment. I don't know, man. That just seems stupid. So yeah, this game is pretty disappointing. I was pretty hyped for this game and it just dropped the ball. There's very little improvement upon the first game besides the visuals and the traversal. I don't think I'm going to replay this game nearly as much as the first game. So yeah, this game isn't bad, but I wouldn't say it's very good either. It has some good things, but it also had a lot of bad things. All in all, this game is just disappointing. Anyways, that's my thoughts on Spider-Man 2 PS5. You can like and subscribe if you want. Patreon in the description if you want to support, and bye.